As Selene and Alaric ventured deeper into the cavern, the air grew thick with tension, the weight of centuries pressing down on them. The stone in Alaric's hand pulsed with an intense glow, casting long, flickering shadows along the jagged walls. The twisted creatures that had stalked them moments before seemed to linger at the edges of the light, hissing in frustration, as if the power of the stone kept them at bay. The cave soon opened into a vast chamber, unlike anything Selene had ever imagined. Massive pillars of crystal jutted from the ground, each one glowing faintly with an otherworldly light, and the ceiling arched high above them, lost in darkness. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone archway, engraved with runes similar to the ones Selene had seen on the monument outside. "This is it," Alaric whispered, his voice barely audible in the vast silence of the chamber. "The gateway to the Forgotten Realm." Selene's breath caught in her throat. The air around the archway felt thick with power, as though the very fabric of reality had grown thin. She could feel the pull of the magic, a strange humming in her bones. The vision she had seen before, the ancient cities, the dark forces consuming them, felt closer now, more real. And yet, there was something else, a presence, lurking just beyond the veil of the two worlds. "Alaric," she began, but her voice trailed off as a rumbling echoed through the chamber. The shadows that had been circling them suddenly surged forward, filling the chamber with darkness. The creatures, now more numerous than before, descended upon them, their glowing eyes burning with malevolent intent. "Stay behind me!" Alaric shouted, drawing his sword in one swift motion. The blade gleamed in the dim light, and for a brief moment, Selene thought she saw runes similar to the ones on the stone etched into the steel. Selene's heart raced as she gripped her dagger tightly. Despite her fear, she refused to let it paralyze her. She had come too far to turn back now. Alaric moved with a speed and precision that Selene could hardly comprehend, cutting through the shadowy creatures with practiced ease. His sword seemed to glow with its own light, each strike banishing the darkness and sending the creatures shrieking back into the shadows. But there were too many. One of the creatures lunged at Selene, its twisted form moving faster than she could react. Just as it was about to strike, she felt a surge of power, deep, primal, burst from within her. Her hand shot forward instinctively, and a pulse of blinding white light erupted from her palm, throwing the creature back with a howl of pain. Selene gasped, staring at her hand in disbelief. She had never used magic before. How had she? "Selene!" Alaric's voice cut through her thoughts. He was standing a few feet away, breathing heavily, his sword still raised. "The stone, it's awakened something inside you." Selene glanced down at the stone in Alaric's hand. Its glow was brighter now, almost matching the light that had erupted from her. "But how?" "There's no time to explain," Alaric interrupted, his eyes darting toward the archway. "We need to seal the barrier, or this will only get worse." The creatures were regrouping, their numbers growing once more. The shadows seemed endless, their hatred for the light palpable. Selene swallowed her fear and nodded. There was no turning back now. They moved quickly toward the stone archway, the air around them crackling with energy. The runes on the arch seemed to pulse in time with the stone in Alaric's hand, as though they were reacting to its presence. Alaric approached the center of the arch, where a small stone pedestal stood, its surface covered in intricate carvings. He placed the glowing stone in the center of the pedestal, and immediately, the runes on the arch began to glow brighter, their light filling the chamber. Selene felt the ground tremble beneath her feet as the air around the archway shimmered, distorting the space within it. The barrier between the two worlds was growing weaker. "Now, Selene," Alaric said, his voice calm despite the urgency in the air. "You have the power to seal the gateway. The stone has bonded with you. You're the only one who can do this." Selene's heart pounded in her chest. She had never asked for this, never expected to be part of something so much larger than herself. But now, standing before the gateway to an ancient realm, with the fate of both worlds hanging in the balance, she knew she couldn't turn away. She closed her eyes and focused on the power she had felt earlier, the strange energy that had surged through her when she faced the creatures. Slowly, she raised her hand, feeling the magic stir within her once more. As she did, the runes on the arch flared to life, their light growing blindingly bright. The creatures howled in rage, their forms flickering and distorting as they were pulled back toward the archway. The air around Selene vibrated with power, and for a moment, she felt as though she were floating, suspended between the two worlds. Then, with a final surge of light, the archway sealed. The creatures screamed as they were pulled into the void, their forms dissolving into nothingness. The chamber was suddenly silent, the oppressive darkness lifted, leaving only the faint glow of the runes on the walls. Selene collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. The power within her slowly faded, leaving her feeling drained but victorious. For a long moment, neither Selene nor Alaric spoke. The only sound was the faint echo of the wind howling outside the cave. Selene stared at the archway, now dormant, its once glowing runes dim and lifeless. The gateway to the Forgotten Realm had been sealed, but for how long? Alaric knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "The barrier is sealed, for now." Selene looked up at him, her eyes filled with questions. "What happens next? Will the creatures come back?" Alaric's expression was grave. "The barrier will hold, but not forever. The forces on the other side are powerful, and they'll try again. We've only delayed the inevitable." Selene nodded, her mind racing with the implications of what they had just done. The Forgotten Realm, the dark forces, the magic that had awakened within her, it was all far from over. "We have to find a way to stop them for good," she said, determination filling her voice. "We can't just keep sealing the barrier. There has to be another way." Alaric smiled faintly, his eyes reflecting the same determination. "There is," he said. "But it won't be easy. There are others like you, people with the power to shape the future of both worlds. We'll need to find them if we're to have any hope of defeating the darkness once and for all." Selene stood, her legs still shaky but her resolve stronger than ever. "Then let's get started." As they left the chamber and stepped back into the cold mountain air, Selene felt a strange sense of peace. She had always longed for adventure, for something more than the simple life of the village. Now, she had found it, but it was far more than she had ever imagined. The journey ahead would be dangerous, filled with challenges she couldn't yet foresee. But for the first time in her life, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Together, Selene and Alaric began their descent down the mountain, their path uncertain, but their purpose clear. The echoes of the Forgotten Realm still lingered in the air, whispering of a future yet to be written. And Selene was ready to face it. Selene and Alaric's descent from the Thornspire Mountains was arduous, but their spirits were buoyed by their recent victory. The sun had begun to rise, casting long shadows across the land as they made their way back toward the village. The chill of the mountain air was beginning to give way to the warmer, gentler breezes of the lowlands. Their journey led them to a small, bustling town named Frostvale, known for its trade and commerce. Alaric explained that Frostvale was a hub where people from many regions gathered, making it a likely place to find those who might possess the ancient magic needed to combat the dark forces. As they approached the town's main square, they were greeted by the sights and sounds of a lively market. Stalls brimmed with exotic goods from distant lands, and the chatter of merchants and townsfolk created a cacophony of sound. Selene marveled at the variety of people and artifacts on display. It was a world so different from her village's quiet simplicity. "I need to find someone who can help us," Alaric said, his gaze scanning the crowd. "There are old allies, mages, warriors, who might know more about the forces we're facing." Selene nodded, her eyes searching the crowd as well. "Where do we start?" Alaric led her to a nearby inn, the Silver Griffin, known for being a gathering place for adventurers and scholars alike. Inside, the inn was warm and inviting, filled with the rich aroma of spiced meat and baked bread. The patrons, a mix of rugged travelers and curious locals, gave the two newcomers a cursory glance before returning to their conversations. Alaric approached the innkeeper, an older woman with a kind face and sharp eyes. "We're looking for anyone who might be able to help us with a unique problem," he said. "Someone with knowledge of ancient magic or the old ways." The innkeeper's eyes narrowed slightly. "You're not the only ones asking for such help these days," she said. "There have been whispers of dark forces stirring. But you'll need to speak with Eldrick, the scholar. He's been researching old legends for years. You'll find him in the library."